She was dismissed the instant she crossed the threshold, wearing a grey linen dress, a faded blue cardigan, and quiet flats, an outfit that invited derision in a room teeming with polished airs. She drew sneers like a magnet. Their smiles were too sharp, too practiced to be sincere. The first to speak was a man in a gold tie. He half laughed, half scoffed. "Is that the maid?" A young woman leaned toward her friend, voice barely a whisper, but loud enough to wound. Probably some washed-up mistress hoping for a payout. At the back of the room, Ivy Clark said nothing. She didn't flinch. She simply adjusted the strap of the cloth bag slung over her shoulder. To them, she was nothing more than a shadow, an outsider who had mistakenly wandered into a sanctuary reserved for bloodlines, legacy, and calculated ambition. But they were wrong. The woman they had just mocked was not only legitimate, she was the legal wife of the man whose estate they were circling like vultures. And today's reading of the will? That was the stage Ivy helped set. The Thorne estate loomed atop a wooded hill, its stone facade and wrought iron gates guarding secrets with the stubbornness of history. Inside, the grand hall was soaked in the scent of old money, polished oak, aged leather, and the faint, expensive trace of roses from vases that cost more than most people earned in a year. Crystal chandeliers dripped from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls, scattering April sunlight across a crowd of 42. Relatives, investors, advisors, assistants, all dressed to stake their claim in Logan Thorne's empire. Tailored suits, silk dresses, diamonds that blinked with every toast. They drifted between flutes of champagne and murmured condolences, each line as rehearsed as their smiles. Ivy slipped in like smoke, her flat silent on the marble. She chose a corner near a tall window that framed the mist-draped hills. Her dress hung loosely, soft from years of wear. The cardigan, a pale blue long past its prime, slid from one shoulder. Her hair was twisted into a low, practical bun, a few wisps left free to frame her face. She wore no makeup, but needed none. High cheekbones, sharp hazel eyes that missed nothing, and lips that stayed closed when lesser women would have fired back. At 36, Ivy Clark possessed a kind of beauty that didn't scream. It lingered, like the last note of a haunting melody. The man in the gold tie, Preston Thorne, Logan's second cousin, had no idea what kind of storm he'd just dared to laugh at. He leaned casually against a mahogany table, the gleam of his Rolex catching the light as he smirked. "Seriously, who let the cleaning crew in?" His voice was loud enough to carry, each word wrapped in mockery, designed to draw laughter. It worked. A cluster of cousins chuckled on cue. Marissa, his sister, clad in a crimson dress that matched the venom in her tone, flipped her hair and added, "Maybe she's here to dust the will before it's read." Laughter broke out again, brittle and sharp like glass shattering on marble. Across the room, Clara, a young tech entrepreneur and self-styled influencer with a TikTok following, nudged her friend Elise, Logan's former CFO's assistant. "Bet she's one of his charity projects," Clara whispered, her voice pitched just loud enough to carry. "Or a mistress he forgot to delete. Look at that bag, like she brought her lunch." Elise snorted, raising her phone. She angled it just so, then snapped a discreet photo. "This is going on my story," she muttered. "Hashtag Thorne will flop." Clara's fingers moved like lightning over her screen, her smirk deepening as she typed a caption. "Found. Logan's charity case. Crashing the will reading. Apparently thrift store chic now comes with billion-dollar delusions." She read it aloud, ensuring Ivy heard every word. Laughter rippled outward. More phones appeared, screens lighting up as the post spread like wildfire. Comments poured in, anonymous strangers jeering, calling Ivy desperate, irrelevant, a leech. Digital cruelty echoing real-world contempt. Ivy didn't move. Her hazel eyes flicked once to Clara's glowing screen, registering the viral storm now forming in her name. But she said nothing. She didn't flinch. Her silence wasn't submission, it was defiance. But they mistook it for weakness, a silence they were desperate to break. Elise leaned in, her voice syrupy with mock pity. "Poor thing doesn't even know she's a meme now." The laughter crescendoed, a symphony of scorn that stripped Ivy of humanity, casting her as a punchline in a room hungry for humiliation. Her fingers tightened slightly on the strap of her cloth bag, a plain, hand-stitched thing with no brand, no glitter, no armour but dignity. She didn't meet Clara's smug gaze. She didn't dignify Preston's taunt or Marissa's condescension with so much as a glance. She just stood, still, silent, unshaken. And that was the part they didn't understand. The storm wasn't swallowing her. She was the storm, quiet now, but not for long. Ivy stood still, breathing steady, eyes locked on the empty chair at the front of the room, the seat reserved for the lawyer. To them, her silence reeked of weakness. To them, it meant she didn't belong. What they couldn't see was the steel beneath that stillness, the way her calm, unflinching presence held the room without trying. The noise swelled as more people arrived. Gerald Hayes, a former investor in a pinstriped suit, leaned toward his wife and muttered, "Logan always had strays hanging around. This one? Doesn't belong here." His wife, glistening in emeralds, gave Ivy a sweeping, disdainful glance. "No class," she whispered, her voice a scalpel. "She's embarrassing the family just standing there." Trevor, a distant cousin in a wine-coloured velvet blazer, called out with a grin, "Hey, sweetheart, the kitchen's that way." Laughter followed, his friends slapping his back like he'd just landed a punch. From the edge of the room, Lillian, an aunt by marriage, twice removed, shook her head with a click of her tongue. "Someone should escort her out before the lawyer arrives. It's disrespectful to Logan's memory." Marissa's crimson dress sliced through the room like blood in water as she approached, heels ticking against the floor like a countdown. She stopped inches from Ivy, looming. Her perfume was cloying, a calculated weapon. "You're in the wrong place, darling," she said, voice loud, performative. She reached out and flicked Ivy's cardigan between two perfectly manicured fingers, her touch laced with insult. "This isn't a soup kitchen. Leave now, before you humiliate yourself any further." The room watched, rapt. Some smirked. Others whispered. Not one stepped in. Ivy's hands stayed steady on the strap of her cloth bag, a plain, carefully stitched thing, devoid of labels, defiant in its simplicity. Marissa's closeness was an act of domination, a threat dressed in couture. And the room's silence? That was approval. A silent chorus, echoing her cruelty. Nearby, a cousin muttered, "She's got some nerve." And still, Ivy didn't move. Her gaze flicked, just once, to the security camera in the corner, its red light blinking in quiet witness. She knew the feed was live. She knew only 2 people could access it. She was one. The other wasn't in the room yet. Behind her, Trevor moved like a shadow, brushing the wall as he passed. He whispered to his friends, "Watch this." He snatched a cocktail napkin, scribbled charity case across it in thick Sharpie strokes, and tucked it into Ivy's bag strap while her back was turned. The room noticed. Laughter rippled, fingers pointed, phones raised. Clara snapped another photo. Elise giggled behind her hand. "She's a walking joke now," she said. Ivy remained unaware. Her focus was locked on the front as Grayson prepared to speak, but the glee behind her swelled, taunting, hungry, electric. Trevor reclined, with satisfaction. Lillian whispered, "Serves her right for showing up like that." The prank was no longer a joke. It had become ritual, a public hazing, a punishment for daring to stand where they believed she had no right. At precisely 10 a.m., Arthur Grayson entered. His grey suit was immaculate. His briefcase was heavy with secrets. 60-something, with a face weathered by decades of handling inheritances, lawsuits, and silent wars between bloodlines. The room fell quiet as he took his place, set the briefcase on the table, and opened it with practiced precision. He drew out a single sealed envelope. No pomp, no speech. He adjusted his glasses and swept the room with a glance. When his eyes found Ivy, he paused. For just a moment, but long enough. Preston noticed. His smirk faltered. He leaned toward Marissa, voice low. "What the hell was that about?" Before she could answer, Gerald Hayes stepped forward, indignation swelling in his voice. "This woman is a fraud," he declared, pointing a trembling finger at Ivy. "Logan would never let someone like her near his estate. She's here to scam us, plain and simple." The room erupted into murmurs, nods, narrowed eyes. His wife added with a sneer, "She's probably carrying a fake ID in that rag of a bag." Accusation hung in the air like smoke, clinging to Ivy, reshaping her into a criminal in their minds. Her very presence, an offence they couldn't abide. Still, Ivy didn't react. Not to the venom, not to the judgment, but the pressure was there, coiling around her like a vice. Every word another lash, meant to peel her apart. Grayson cleared his throat, voice crisp and unshaken. "We are here to read the last will and testament of Logan Alexander Thorne. Executed 3 years ago, verified and legally binding." Asps rippled. Whispers rose. 3 years? Logan had disappeared just 6 months ago. His private jet vanished over the Pacific. No wreckage, no body. Only speculation and headlines, and greed. Most assumed he was dead. Most hoped he was. Preston adjusted his tie, that familiar smirk crawling back into place. "Well, let's get on with it. Who gets the keys to the kingdom?" Near the front, Clara leaned in, her manicured nails tapping against her phone, already crafting her next post. In the hush that followed, Gerald folded his arms, scowling under his breath about stock options. Lillian clutched her pearls like a lifeline, leaning toward Trevor to whisper something frantic about the summer home in Nice. At the edge of it all, Ivy remained still. Her bag now rested at her feet, forgotten. Her gaze held steady on Arthur Grayson's hands as he broke the wax seal. The snap echoed through the room, sharp, final. The crowd leaned in, breaths shallow, faces tight with anticipation. This was the moment they'd flown across oceans for. Dressed in designer grief, practiced condolences, sharpened like blades. Logan Thorne's empire was on the table. Tech patents, real estate, and a biotech firm valued north of $90 billion. Grayson unfolded the document, his voice clear and unwavering. Each word dropped like stone into still water. I, Logan Alexander Thorne, being of sound mind, declare this my final will and testament. Murmurs rippled. To my family, colleagues, and associates, I leave nothing but this truth. Wealth reveals character, not worth. Silence cracked like ice. Preston's smirk twitched. Clara's phone slipped in her grip. Gerald clenched his jaw. His wife suddenly looked like her emeralds were made of lead. Nothing? Someone whispered. Horse, that can't be right. But Grayson pressed on, unshaken. All my assets, company shares, properties, accounts, and intellectual property, are bequeathed to one person. The one who stood by me not for profit or power, but for love. The one who never asked my worth, never sought my name to elevate her own. My wife, Ivy. A collective gasp cut through the room, sharp and disbelieving. Dozens of eyes scanned the space as if the truth had a visible face. Wife! Preston barked out a laugh, jagged and hollow. Logan wasn't married. Marissa raised a trembling hand to her mouth, her crimson nails a slash of colour against her pale face. Clara turned to Elise, eyes wide. Elise mouthed, What the hell? Gerald stood, his chair screeching across the floor. This is absurd! Logan never once mentioned a wife. It's a scam. This will is fake. Lillian's voice pitched high. She's not here, is she? Some gold-digging nobody walking off with our inheritance? Grayson raised a hand, calm and commanding. The will is authentic, signed, notarized, and legally binding. Supporting documents include a marriage certificate, personal letters, and photographs. He pulled a folder from his briefcase and opened it, revealing a photo. Logan, younger and laughing, one arm around Ivy, who wore a simple white dress. They stood in front of a courthouse. On the back of the photograph, a date. 7 years ago. The room erupted. Preston slammed a fist against the table. This is insane. Who even is she? Clara shouted, her phone forgotten on her lap. Where is she? Let's see this Ivy, Trevor sneered. Probably some con artist hiding out back. And Marissa's voice sliced through the din, sharp with venom. If she's real, why isn't she standing here? Too ashamed to show her face? She was. They just hadn't looked hard enough. Ivy stepped forward. No grand announcement, no dramatic entrance, just motion, deliberate, graceful, like the tide turning. Her flats were soundless on the marble, but the silence she left in her wake was deafening. All eyes turned. Her cardigan shifted with the movement, the hem of her dress catching a slant of sunlight from the tall windows. She walked to Grayson's side, spine straight, expression calm. The cloth bag hung at her shoulder, still unbranded, still hers. Preston's jaw slackened, gold tie now garish under the weight of his disbelief. Clara flushed crimson, her earlier post like a live wire burning in her pocket. Gerald sank into his seat. His wife said nothing. Lillian's hand froze, her pearls tight around her throat. Grayson looked to Ivy. A flicker of something, respect, passed through his eyes. Mrs. Thorne, he said, offering her the folder. She took it. She took the folder, without a tremor. Her hands were steady, her breath even as she opened it. Her eyes lingered on the photograph, Logan's arm around her, their joy immortalized in that single frame. Her lips curved, just slightly. A memory, quiet and warm. Then she closed the folder and turned to face them. I didn't come for the money, she said. Her voice was soft, but carried like a bell through fog. I came to see who you really are. Who among you mourned Logan the man, not Logan the fortune? She paused. Her hazel eyes moved through the crowd, calm and unwavering. You showed me. All of you. Preston found his voice, thin, defiant. You expect us to believe you were his wife? He sneered, gesturing at her clothes. Logan Thorne married this? No offense, lady, but you look like you shop at thrift stores. Ivy didn't flinch. I do, she said, her tone even. Logan didn't care. He loved me for who I was, not what I wore. Can any of you say the same? Clara scoffed, folding her arms across her chest. Nice performance, but I'm not buying it. A photo doesn't prove anything. Anyone can fake a picture. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room, confidence building like a mob warming up. Gerald nodded, puffing up his chest. She's right. If you're really his wife, prove it. We want more. Witnesses, records, something real. Grayson didn't flinch. He reopened his briefcase and methodically removed a stack of documents. Marriage certificate, he said, laying it down. Dated 7 years ago, signed by Logan and Ivy Thorne. Witnessed by Sarah Ellis, a registered nurse, and Michael Reed, a public librarian. More papers followed. Personal letters, handwritten by Logan, verified by forensic analysts. Joint bank accounts held privately at Logan's request. And, he paused, holding up a small USB drive. Wedding footage. He inserted it into a laptop connected to a screen. A moment later, the monitor flickered to life. Grainy footage appeared. Courthouse steps. Logan in a suit, Ivy in a white dress, laughing, kissing. Sarah and Michael stood nearby, clapping. The timestamp matched the marriage certificate exactly. The room held its breath. Clara stared, speechless. Gerald's hands tightened on the chair. Even Marissa looked pale. The wall of disbelief cracked. Marissa found her voice, high, furious. This is a setup. You planned this. You wanted to make us look bad. You're nobody. Logan would never marry someone like you. The words landed hard, sharp, but Ivy's expression didn't shift. She let the silence stretch until Marissa's rage began to collapse into itself. You're right about one thing, Ivy said coldly. This was planned, but not to humiliate you, to test you. She stepped closer. The air shifted. To see if anyone here would ask who I was before you judged me. If you'd honor Logan's memory or just fight over what he left behind. She looked them over one last time. You failed, all of you. Trevor laughed, nervous, brittle. A test? What is this, survivor? Come on, you can't be serious. But his voice faltered under Ivy's gaze, level and unyielding. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small remote. Logan isn't dead, she said. The room froze. He's alive, and he's been watching you this entire time. She pressed the button. Another monitor on the wall lit up. A live feed appeared. A dim room. A man seated calmly in a chair. Logan Thorne, 42, sharp blue eyes, dark hair streaked with grey. Alive. He looked directly into the camera, then into them. The timestamp in the corner read, April 15th, 2025, 10:32 a.m. Gasps tore through the room. Shouts, disbelief. Preston stumbled back, his tie askew. Clara dropped her phone. The screen cracked on the marble floor. Gerald's wife clung to his arm, whispering, No. It can't be. Lillian's pearls snapped, scattering beads across the floor like marbles rolling through a bombed cathedral. And still, Ivy stood in the center of it all, silent, steady, seen. Beads rolled across the marble floor like scattered truth, and then Logan's voice filled the room, deep and unwavering through the monitor. You thought I was gone, thought this was your moment to divide my life like a carcass at a feast. But I've been here, watching, listening, every whispered scheme, every insult, every lie. His gaze shifted, precise, as though piercing the screen and locking eyes with Ivy. She warned me, said you'd reveal yourselves the moment you thought I was gone. She was right. Ivy's lips quirked. Just the faintest ghost of a smile. She turned to face the crowd, calm and clear. Logan's plane never crashed. That was a lie, a controlled exit, a way for him to step out of the noise and watch from the shadows, to see who stayed loyal and who showed their teeth. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. You came here dressed in silk and strategy, ready to seize what wasn't yours. But this was never about money. It was always about truth. At that moment, The grand hall's double doors creaked open. Gasps rippled. Logan Thorne walked in, not a ghost, not a projection, real, breathing, alive. His presence hit like thunder rolling through glass. He wore no tie. His shoes were worn from travel. But there was power in his stillness, enough to still the room. The sea of opportunists parted. Whispers shriveled to silence. He moved without haste, every step a verdict. When he reached Ivy, his fingers brushed hers. The brief contact was grounding. Two souls in quiet synchrony. She glanced up, and her features softened for the first time. He gave a simple nod.